The metal doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador James Reed walked in, his polished black shoes clicking against the marble-like floor. The chamber was massive, with curved walls stretching up hundreds of feet to a transparent dome that showed the stars beyond. Seats for over 200 alien species rose in circles, like a giant amphitheater in space. Reed looked exactly like what the aliens expected from a human diplomat, calm, well-dressed, and seemingly harmless in his Earth-made suit. His gray hair and kind face made him look more like someone's grandfather than a threat to galactic peace. That was exactly what he wanted them to think. The council members watched him with their various eyes, tentacles and sensory organs. Some showed boredom, others mild interest. They had heard human complaints before. To them, this was just another day of dealing with the galaxy's newest spacefaring race. "Honorable Council," Reed began, his voice clear and strong in the quiet chamber. "I stand before you today representing not just Earth, but all human colonies." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the gathered aliens. "For 5 years, we have brought evidence of attacks on our worlds. For 5 years, you have dismissed our concerns." High above, Council Speaker Marcus leaned forward on his floating platform. His crystalline body sparkled under the chamber's lights. "Ambassador Reed, we have investigated every claim. The pirates you speak of are criminals operating outside Council space. We cannot be held responsible for." "With respect, Speaker," Reed cut in. "Something no one ever did. I'm not finished." He pulled out a small device from his pocket. A hologram appeared above it, showing footage of a recent attack on a human mining colony. The chamber grew darker as the hologram expanded. It showed ships attacking the colony, ships that weren't just pirate vessels. Among them were military-grade cruisers bearing the markings of 3 council races. Gasps and angry mutters filled the chamber. Reed continued playing the footage. "This attack on New Dakota colony resulted in 2,000 deaths and 800 humans taken as slaves." His voice grew harder. "Slaves who were then sold in markets operating within Council space, under the protection of Council members." "These images could be fabricated," a voice called out. It belonged to Representative Dox of the Trade Worlds. "Humans are known for their skill with digital deceptions." Reed smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Which is why we didn't rely solely on video evidence." He pressed another button, and new holograms appeared. These showed banking records, communication logs, and flight paths. "For 5 years, we've been gathering proof. Every transaction, every communication, every ship movement. We know which council members have been profiting from human suffering." The chamber erupted in shouts and accusations. Some council members began hurriedly checking their own devices, perhaps wondering what else the humans knew. Speaker Marcus's crystalline form flashed with patterns of distress. "Ambassador Reed, these are serious accusations. If you have proof of wrongdoing, there are proper channels." "The proper channels have failed us," Reed said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "We tried diplomacy. We tried your legal system. We tried everything peaceful that you asked of us." He straightened his tie, a simple human gesture that somehow made several alien representatives lean back in their seats. "What are you suggesting?" Marcus asked, though from his tone, he already knew. Reed's next words fell like bombs in the quiet chamber. "Humanity is declaring war." The chaos that followed was exactly what Reed had expected. Council members shouted, guards moved forward, and emergency signals began flashing. But Reed stood calmly, checking his watch. "Right now," he said, his voice somehow carrying over the noise, "human fleets are moving into position around every pirate base we've identified, including those in Council space." He looked up at Marcus, whose crystalline body had gone completely still. "You didn't really think we'd announce war without being ready to fight it, did you?" The chamber's emergency lights suddenly shifted from yellow to red. A guard rushed to Speaker Marcus, whispering something urgent. Marcus's color changed to a pale blue, a sign of fear in his species. Reed allowed himself a small smile. The game was finally moving into its next phase, exactly as planned. 6 months earlier, Earth Defense Command, underground facility, Rocky Mountains. Admiral Kate Thompson stood in the dark command center, watching dozens of holographic ships move across the star map. Each dot represented a civilian vessel being secretly converted for war. The massive underground chamber hummed with activity as officers and technicians worked at their stations, preparing for a conflict most of humanity didn't know was coming. "Status report on Operation Lighthouse," she ordered, her voice firm but quiet. The Admiral never needed to shout to command attention. Colonel Peters stepped forward, tablet in hand. "We've completed modifications on 80% of our merchant fleet, Admiral. The cargo ships look normal from the outside, but they're ready to drop their shells and reveal the weapons underneath." He zoomed in on one of the moving dots. "Even the Council's best scanners can't detect the changes." Thompson nodded, her silver-streaked black hair reflecting the blue light from the displays. "And the crew training? Completed in small groups to avoid attention. We have 20,000 civilian captains and crews who are actually military personnel in disguise. They'd been running normal trade routes for months, mapping Council space and collecting data." The Admiral walked to another display showing the pirate attacks on human colonies. Each red dot represented lives lost, families destroyed. The Council's inaction had forced humanity's hand, but they would respond with careful planning, not blind rage. "How are the new defense systems performing?" Thompson asked, turning to Dr. Miller, their head of research and development. The scientist grinned, pushing up his glasses. "Better than we hoped. We've reverse-engineered every piece of technology used against us in the raids. But here's the best part." He pulled up a new diagram. "We've improved them. The pirates gave us the blueprint, but human innovation made them better." Thompson allowed herself a small smile. The aliens thought humans were just clever copycats, good at borrowing other species' technology, but not truly innovative. They were wrong. A young lieutenant rushed into the command center, holding the secure tablet. "Admiral, we just got word from Ambassador Reed. The Council dismissed our latest petition about the slave trading." "Right on schedule," Thompson said calmly. "They've rejected every piece of evidence we've shown them for 5 years. Why would this time be different?" She turned to address the entire command center. "This is what we've been waiting for. Send the signal to all Operation Lighthouse vessels. Final preparation phase begins now." The room burst into controlled activity. Officers relayed orders, ships adjusted their positions across the galaxy, and hidden weapons came online for final testing. Colonel Peters studied the master display, watching the pieces fall into place. "It's amazing they never noticed. We've been building an entire war fleet right under their noses." "That's because we understand something they don't," Thompson replied, watching as more green dots appeared on the display, representing ships ready for combat. "They think humanity's strength is in our technology or our resources, but our real power is in our patience and our unity." She walked to the central platform and pressed a button. A new hologram appeared, showing the faces of every human colony leader and military commander involved in the operation. "Status report, all commands," she ordered. One by one, they reported in. Hidden shipyards in asteroid belts, weapons platforms disguised as communication satellites, training camps buried under the ice of distant moons. Everything was ready. "Time for the final phase," Thompson announced. "Ambassador Reed will present our evidence to the Council in 6 months. When they reject it, and they will reject it, we'll be ready." She looked at the assembled faces of humanity's defenders. "Until then, maintain cover. Keep running those trade routes. Let them think we're just simple merchants and defeated diplomats." As the hologram faded, Thompson turned back to the star map. Soon, the galaxy would learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their guns or ships. It was their ability to work together, to plan, and to wait for the perfect moment to act. The Admiral checked her watch. In 6 months, the galaxy would change forever. and humanity would be ready. The council guards had moved closer to Ambassador Reed, but they hadn't dared to touch him yet. The human stood calmly at the center of the chamber, hands folded behind his back, as chaos erupted around him. Emergency lights painted the scene in shades of red, making the alien representative's movements look even more frantic. "You cannot seriously think." Speaker Marcus's voice boomed across the chamber, his crystalline form flashing with patterns of anger. "That humanity can challenge the combined might of the council races." Reed's smile grew wider. He reached into his pocket and pulled out another device, larger than the first. The hologram it projected filled the entire chamber. Thousands of dots appeared, representing ships across hundreds of star systems. "The blue dots," Reed explained calmly, "are your military vessels. The red ones are ours." As he spoke, more and more red dots appeared, surrounding key positions across council space. "Would you like to count them?" A low murmur spread through the chamber as the council members realized just how many red dots there were. "Impossible," Representative Dox shouted, his tentacles writhing in agitation. "We monitor all military shipbuilding." "Yes, you do," Reed agreed. "That's why we didn't build military ships." He pressed another button, and the image zoomed in on one of the red dots. It showed what appeared to be a normal cargo vessel suddenly splitting apart, revealing weapon systems hidden within its hull. "We modified our civilian fleet instead. Those cargo ships you've been scanning for years. They're all warships in disguise." The chamber erupted again, but Reed raised his voice slightly, continuing as if giving a lecture. "Every trade route we established, every mining operation we set up, every repair station we built, all of them were positioned according to military strategy. While you were watching for battleships, our merchants were moving into tactical positions across your space." Speaker Marcus's crystalline form had gone from angry red to pale blue again. This is an act of war." "No," Reed's voice turned hard. "Selling our people into slavery was an act of war. Attacking our colonies was an act of war. This," he gestured to the hologram, "this is justice." He turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber. "For 5 years, we gave you chances to stop this. We showed you evidence. We filed complaints. We followed your procedures. And what did you do?" His voice rose slightly. "You took bribes from slave traders. You sold weapons to pirates. You profited from human suffering." Reed pressed another button. The hologram changed to show faces, hundreds of them. "These are the humans who died in attacks you ignored. These are the children who were sold in your slave markets. These are the families waiting for loved ones who will never come home." The chamber had gone completely silent. "We tried peace," Reed continued, his voice quieter now, but carrying to every corner of the vast room. "We tried diplomacy. We tried to be the calm, reasonable newcomers you wanted us to be. But make no mistake." He looked up at Speaker Marcus. "We were preparing for war the entire time." As if on cue, every communication device in the chamber lit up with emergency signals. Reports were flooding in from across council space, human ships revealing their true nature, taking up strategic positions around military bases, shipyards, and government centers. "You have 1 hour," Reed announced to the stunned silence. "Surrender the officials involved in the slave trade. Open your records for investigation. Submit to a complete reform of the council's governing structure." He checked his watch. "If you refuse, we start dismantling your corrupt empire piece by piece." A young aide rushed to Speaker Marcus, whispering urgently in his ear. The crystalline alien's color shifted through several patterns before he spoke, his voice notably less confident. "The human ships, they're not just in council space. They're everywhere, even here." Reed nodded. "Look outside." As one, the council members turned toward the transparent dome above. The station's defensive fleet was still there, but it was now surrounded by dozens of human vessels that had just dropped their civilian disguises. "The choice is yours," Reed said quietly. "Justice or war. You have 1 hour to decide." Admiral Thompson stood at the command center of the EDF Phoenix, watching as the timer counted down. The massive view screen showed hundreds of disguised human ships moving into their final positions. 45 minutes remained in Reed's ultimatum to the Council. "All strike groups report ready," Colonel Peters announced from his station. "Operation Lighthouse is green across all sectors." Thompson nodded, her expression firm. "Send the code phrase to Ambassador Reed. Let him know we're in position." On her personal screen, she watched the hidden camera feed from the council chamber. Reed received the message on his watch, but his face showed nothing. He was still standing calmly in the center of the chamber, watching the council races argue among themselves. "Pirate base locations confirmed," a young lieutenant called out. "Primary targets are still at their stations. They don't suspect anything." Of course they didn't. The pirates and corrupt council members had grown too comfortable, too sure of their power. They never imagined that those simple human cargo ships were actually watching them, recording their movements, preparing for this moment. 30 minutes to deadline," Peters announced. Thompson opened a channel to all ships. "Remember your training. We're not here for revenge. This is about justice and protecting our people. Stick to your assigned targets. No civilian casualties." The responses came back crisp and professional. These weren't angry warriors looking for blood. They were professionals who had trained for years while pretending to be merchants and traders. A new alert flashed on the main screen. 3 council warships had broken formation near one of the larger pirate bases, moving to an attack position. "They're going to warn the pirates," Peters said, tension in his voice. Thompson smiled slightly. "No, they're going to try." She pressed a button on her command chair. "All ships in Sector 7. Execute Plan Delta." The disguised human ships near the council warships suddenly transformed. Their outer hulls split apart like blooming flowers, revealing weapons that had been hidden for years. Before the council ships could react, they were surrounded. 20 minutes to deadline," Peters announced. Another alert flashed. This time, it was a transmission from the council chamber. Speaker Marcus was calling for an emergency vote. Several council members were demanding to know how humans had hidden such a large military force. "Should we tell them?" Peters asked with a small grin. Thompson shook her head. "Let them wonder. Sometimes, the mystery is more powerful than the truth." She checked the tactical display again. Status of the rescue teams. "Ready and waiting. Admiral, the moment we strike the pirate bases, they'll move in to free any slaves they find." This was the part that mattered most. While the council worried about human weapons and ships, the real mission was about saving lives. Every strike team included medical personnel and counselors, ready to help the victims of the slave trade. 10 minutes to deadline," Peters called out. Thompson opened another channel. "All ships begin power-up sequences. Weapon systems online. Remember your training and stay focused." Across the galaxy, hidden human vessels hummed to life. The council races were about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their hidden ships or clever disguises. It was their determination to right the wrongs they had witnessed. 5 minutes. In the council chamber, Reed's voice came through clear on the feed. "Time is running out, honored members. What's your decision?" Speaker Marcus's crystalline form flashed with patterns of defiance. "We will not be threatened by." He never finished his sentence. At that moment, every pirate base across 3 sectors lit up with weapons fire. The hidden human fleet had struck, hitting all targets simultaneously. "All strikes on target," Peters reported, reading the incoming data. "Pirate defenses are crumbling. They never saw us coming." Thompson watched the tactical display as decades of corrupt power began to fall. "Send word to the rescue teams. Begin the liberation of the slave camps." She paused, looking at the bigger picture of the galaxy map. "And someone tell Ambassador Reed that his hour of waiting is over. Operation Lighthouse is now fully active." The revolution had begun. But this was just the first step in humanity's plan to remake the galaxy. The council chamber had transformed into a battlefield of words and accusations. 2 hours after the human strikes began, the massive room was split literally in half. On one side stood the supporters of the old council leadership, on the other, those who had moved to stand with humanity. First Speaker Lyra of the Meridians stepped forward, her tall, elegant form moving gracefully across the chamber floor to stand beside Ambassador Reed. Her species was one of the younger council races, having achieved spaceflight only a century before humans. "The Meridian Empire," she announced, her voice clear and strong, "stands with Earth." She activated her own holographic projector, adding new data to Reed's display. "And we bring our own evidence of corruption." More representatives began moving across the chamber. The Avalon Collective, the Free Worlds of Centauri, the Rim Confederation. One by one, younger species broke away from the old power structure, bringing their own proof of the Council's crimes. Speaker Marcus's crystalline form flashed with patterns of rage and fear. "This is treason. You would side with these newcomers." "We side with justice," Lyra replied calmly. She turned to address the entire chamber. "For too long, the elder races have treated the rest of us as servants, not equals. They dismissed our concerns just as they dismissed humanity's." Reed watched silently as the balance of power shifted. This too had been part of the plan. Human intelligence agents had identified potential allies among the younger races, those who had suffered similar treatment from the Council's corrupt elements. "The Meridian Trading Fleet stands ready to support human operations," Lyra continued. "Our ships will ensure humanitarian aid reaches the liberated slave camps." More announcements followed. The Avalon Collective offered their advanced medical facilities. The Rim Confederation opened their shipyards to human vessels. What had started as humanity's stand for justice was becoming a full revolution in galactic politics. Representative Dox, his tentacles now drooping with worry, hurried to Speaker Marcus's platform. "We must act now. If we combine our remaining fleets—" "That would be unwise," Reed interrupted softly. He pressed a button on his device, and the holographic display updated again. It showed human ships and their new allies taking control of key strategic positions across Council space. "The more you fight, the more evidence we uncover." A new alert flashed across the chamber's emergency screens. The Galactic Bank was reporting massive fund transfers from certain Council members' accounts, transfers that had happened just minutes before the human strikes began. "Trying to hide your profits from the slave trade?" Reed asked mildly. "Our AI systems were watching for that. Every credit has been traced and frozen." Speaker Marcus's color had faded to an almost transparent shade. How long have you been planning this?" "Since our first petition for justice was denied," Reed answered. "We realized then that the system was too corrupt for normal diplomacy. So we planned for something more dramatic." Lyra stepped forward again. "The Meridian Empire motions for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current Council leadership. Seconded, call the Avalon representative. Third, added the Rim Confederation speaker." Reed watched as more allies joined the call. The chamber's voting systems activated, displays lighting up across the great room. The result was clear within minutes. The old guard had lost their power. Speaker Marcus and his supporters were quickly surrounded by guards, not Council forces, but a mix of human and allied security teams who had been waiting for this moment. "What happens now?" someone asked from the chamber floor. Reed looked at Lyra and the other allied representatives. "Now we rebuild. A new council. Just one." He paused, allowing himself a small smile. "And this time, everyone gets an equal voice." As if to emphasize his words, another report flashed across the chamber's screens. The last major pirate base had just fallen to human forces. The old order was ending. Something new was about to begin. Deep within Earth's Cyber Command Center, hidden beneath the ice of Antarctica, Director Tom White watched as his teams executed the final phase of humanity's plan. Massive screens covered every wall, showing the status of the Council's vast communication network. "Sir," called out lead analyst Lisa Cooper, her fingers flying over her holographic keyboard. "Operation Backdoor is ready. All sleeper programs are in position." White nodded, his expression serious. "Send the signal. Let's show them what else we've been hiding." Across the galaxy, in thousands of Council communication hubs, programs that had been dormant for years suddenly activated. These weren't simple viruses or hack attempts. They were something far more sophisticated. Programs that had been learning, growing, and spreading through Council networks since humanity's first contact. In the Council chamber, the effects were immediate. Emergency screens flickered and died. Communication systems went dark. Even the massive holographic displays sputtered out, leaving only Reed's small projector working. "What's happening?" Speaker Marcus demanded, his crystalline form flashing with panic patterns. "Why aren't our systems responding?" Reed's smile was almost sympathetic. "Did you really think we spent 5 years just gathering evidence? Every time you dismissed our complaints, we gained more access to your networks. Every time you ignored us, we planted more backdoors." Back in Antarctica, White watched as years of preparation paid off. "Status report," he ordered. "Council military communication networks are down," Cooper reported. "Their encrypted channels have been cracked. Fleet coordination is impossible for them now." On the main screen, red warning lights representing Council systems turned green one by one as human cyber teams took control. The Council's entire information infrastructure was being dismantled from within. How? A Council tech officer in the chamber was frantically trying to restore their systems. "Our cyber defenses were perfect. We had quantum encryption." "You had what you thought was quantum encryption," Reed corrected. "Those software updates your systems automatically downloaded from our trade ships. They weren't just routine patches." White watched as more systems fell under human control. Each Council ship that had docked with a human trading vessel over the past 5 years had unknowingly received special programming. Each communication with a human outpost had carried hidden code. "Sir," Cooper called out, "we're picking up distress signals from Council military bases. They're completely blind. No communications, no coordination. Maintain control but don't abuse it," White ordered. "We're here to end corruption, not create chaos. Make sure emergency services and civilian communications stay active." In the Council chamber, Reed was explaining to the stunned audience. "Every trade agreement we signed, every diplomatic packet we exchanged, every single interaction, they all served 2 purposes. We were building trust on the surface and building backdoors underneath." Marcus's crystalline form had gone almost completely transparent, a sign of total shock in his species. "All this time, you were playing us." "No," Reed said firmly. "We were giving you chances to do the right thing. Every petition we filed was genuine. Every piece of evidence we presented was real. We hoped you would choose justice." He paused, looking around the chamber. "The backdoors were just in case you didn't." White's team continued their work, systematically taking control of Council systems, but they did it carefully, surgically, protecting civilian infrastructure while dismantling the corrupt military and political command structure. "Final systems coming under control now," Cooper announced. "Operation Backdoor is complete." White allowed himself a small smile. "Send word to Ambassador Reed. Tell him the Council's ability to coordinate any military response is now officially 0. The message reached Reed just as the Council's last emergency backup systems failed. He looked up at the powerless chamber leadership and spoke softly. "Now, about those reforms we discussed." The chamber looked different now. Gone were the towering seats that had placed the elder races physically above the others. Instead, a circular arrangement of equal platforms created a true gathering of peers. Representatives from over 200 species sat together, preparing for the first session of the new Galactic Assembly. Ambassador Reed stood at the center, looking older but satisfied. The past month had been intense, organizing relief efforts for freed slaves, dismantling corruption networks, and building a new governmental structure. But it had been worth it. "The first session of the Galactic Assembly is now in session," he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the renovated chamber. "Let the record show that all member species are present and equal under the new charter." Admiral Thompson and Director White sat in the human section, their presence a reminder of how humanity had forced this change. But they weren't wearing military uniforms anymore. This was a diplomatic gathering. First Speaker Lyra of the Meridians took the floor. "The transition reports are ready," she announced. "In the past month, our joint forces have freed over 50,000 slaves of various species. All have received medical care and transport home." The chamber filled with approving murmurs. On the large screens around the room, images showed the rescue operations. Human ships working alongside Meridian medical vessels. Avalon collective doctors treating former slaves. Rim Confederation transports carrying people home. "The corruption investigations are also complete," added the Avalon representative. "Former Speaker Marcus and 37 other council members have been convicted of crimes against sentient beings. Their assets have been seized and will be used to compensate their victims." Reed nodded. "And the military situation?" Admiral Thompson stood. "All pirate bases have been eliminated. Their hidden accounts have been frozen. Their ships confiscated. The Joint Fleet patrols are working well. Human ships serving alongside our allies to maintain peace." "What about the reformed council members?" someone asked from the outer ring. "Those who admitted their mistakes and helped us. They have been granted amnesty," Reed replied. "As agreed, those who cooperated fully and helped dismantle the corruption networks have kept their positions in this new assembly." He paused. "We're here to build something better, not seek revenge." Director White stepped forward next. "The new communication network is online. Built with combined technology from all member species, it's both more secure and more transparent than the old system. No more hidden backdoors from anyone." That brought a few chuckles. The assembly members had been both impressed and worried when they learned how thoroughly humans had infiltrated the old council's networks. The new system was designed to prevent any single species from doing that again, even humans. "There's one final matter," Reed announced. "The election of the first assembly leader." He looked around the chamber. "By our new charter, this position will rotate between species every 5 years. No species may hold it twice until all have served." First Speaker Lyra stood. "The Meridian Empire nominates Ambassador James Reed of Earth for first assembly leader." The nomination was quickly seconded by the Avalon Collective and supported by others. Reed raised his hand for silence. "I must decline," he said quietly. "Earth has already played a large role in recent events. Let another species lead us into this new era." He turned to Lyra. "I nominate First Speaker Lyra of the Meridians." The vote was quick and unanimous. As Lyra took the center position, Reed stepped back to join his fellow humans. "The galaxy is changing," Lyra announced to the assembly. "Thanks to human courage and planning, we have a chance to build something better. Let us not waste it." As the assembly began its first true session, Reed smiled slightly. Humanity had gone to war not for conquest or revenge, but for justice. And in winning that war, they had gained something far more valuable than territory. They had gained true allies and helped create a better future for all species. The real work was just beginning.